जय भीम। नमो बुद्धाय। नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स। नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स। नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स. So today we will continue to study the part 4 of the book 4, and of that we will be looking at the section 6, which is the last section of the part 4, which is titled as his sermons, and we are going to study from page number 405 to page number 410. And the title of section 6 is Sermons on Socio-Political Questions. And this section becomes all the more important because it covers the teachings of the Buddha on what is called the socio-political questions. And we have seen in the previous classes as to how the Buddha also seeks to address the socio-political questions. And therefore, this section 6 becomes very interesting in the light of what we have been studying. So section 6 is divided into further subsections, and there are 5 subsections in the section 6. So the subsection number 1 is titled as "Do not depend on the favor of princes." We can translate it in the language of today that do not depend on any political power or any external power for the survival of the Buddha's Dhamma. So that's the title of the subsection 1, do not depend on the favor of princes. The subsection 2 is titled as if the king is righteous, his subjects will be righteous. So, the ruler is very important for the ruler to be righteous. If the ruler is not righteous, then the citizens will not be righteous. That's what we can translate in terms of today's conditions. Third, it is the social system on which depends political and military strength. It's very important for our context today, particularly in the context of our country today, that to understand this subsection 3 as it is the social system on which depends political and military strength. And we are going to look into this as to what the Buddha taught when he meant that, what he meant by social system on which depends political and military strength. And the subsection 4 will be about war is wrong, where the Buddha talks about the problems of war, why the conflict of the war is not good. And the last subsection will be about the duty of the victor who has won peace, isn't it? So what is the duty of somebody who has won the war or won the conflict or won any context? What are their duties and how do they follow their duties? So you see these 5 subsections that we see in the Buddha in this section 6 are very important, even relevant for today, and understanding that is very crucial. And as we have seen various categorizations of the Buddha, of his teachings, of his sermons, Baba Ambedkar has very meticulously categorized them into the various categories on which the Buddha has delivered his sermons. So this particular category of socio-political questions is relevant even today. So let's look at those subsections one by one and try to think over, try to reflect on what they mean. So this subsection 1, do not depend on the favor of princes. In today's parlance, we can translate it as follows: that do not depend on the political power, do not depend on any external source of source of support. In other words, develop the support within yourself. This theme of self-reliance has been there in the in the teachings of the Buddha from the start. The Buddha didn't recommend his followers to depend on any external forces or external conditions. And as we have seen in the history of Buddhism, that this has become one of the reasons for the weakening of Buddhism. Because when the political support was not there, the Buddhist Sangha declined. And we have seen that there in the history, there were various ways by which the Buddhist Sangha was deriving its support in terms of, through taxation. There were big monasteries that were run on the basis of the taxation. There were, the political support. There was the support of the group of businessmen, the guilds, the traders. And we have seen very close connection between Buddhism and trading. And in the history, this connection has been brought out very well. So, but here, what's important is not to depend on the favor or gain or even the flattery of anybody. And that's what the Buddha is teaching the Sangha as to how they should become, independent. So here, the context goes like this, that there is this famous opponent of the Buddha, Devadatta, who was his cousin brother. And Devadatta had started his own organization, his own Sangha. And he was favored by the prince Ajatashatru. And Ajatashatru, later he was converted to Buddhism, and he became the follower of the Buddha. But in his previous stint, he was somebody who supported Devadatta. And now we can see that Devadatta's Sangha was alive for a long time. He was a kind of an extremist who favored extremism. And the Buddha said that we cannot impose extreme order on the people. And he was hostile towards the Buddha. We have seen the incidences of Devadatta's attempt to even kill the Buddha. But here the context is like this, that Prince Ajatashatru is supporting Devadatta, and Ajatashatru was maintaining and supporting Devadatta late and early with 500 carts, conveying therein food, brought in 500 cooking pots, isn't it? So, there was a kind of extravaganza of the way Ajatashatru was supporting Devadatta and his followers. The food was brought in 500 carts, and there were 500 cooking pots by which Ajatashatru was serving Devadatta. So a few of the students of the Buddha, the followers of the Buddha, went to him, and they went to him, saluted the Buddha, sat down on one side, and there sitting they told all these things to the exalted one. The use of the word for the Buddha in the scheme of Baba Saheb Ambedkar's Buddha and His Dhamma is very, very beautiful, in a sense that Baba Saheb Ambedkar has used several words to address the Buddha. So one of the words that Baba Saheb Ambedkar used to address the Buddha is the exalted one. So then the blessed Lord, addressing the brethren, said, this is what the Buddha said when he heard that Ajatashatru is serving Devadatta with 500 carts, carrying food in 500 vessels, cooking pots. And this is what the Buddha said: do a not long for gains, favors and flattery from the kings. Very important. He says to his disciples, do not long for gains, favors and flattery from the kings. So long, brethren, as Prince Ajatashatru thus supports Devadatta late and early with 500 carts, conveying therein food, brought in 500 cooking pots, it is ruin, brethren, that may be expected of Devadatta, and not growth in good conditions. Just as if, brethren, the Buddha goes on explaining with the example as to how bad it is to rely on the gains and favors and the flattery of the king. As I said, in the today's context, we can interpret it as not to depend on any external support, not to depend on any external political force, not to depend on any support from the state. So the Buddha goes on expanding the simile. Just as if, brethren, one were to crumble liver on a mad dog's nose, the dog would only get madder. Even so, brethren, so long as Prince Ajashatru thus supports Devadatta, it is ruin that may be expected of Devadatta, and not growth in good conditions. Thus, terrible brethren are gains, favors, and flattery of the princess. They are bitter, painful hindrance to the attainment of the sure peace that passed all. So for the attainment of peace, for the attainment of no conflict, it's very important. The Buddha says not to depend on the gains, on the favors, and the flattery of kings. So in other words, the Buddha is suggesting that the Sangha should become self-dependent. And we have seen the way the Buddha has asked the bhikshus to become self-dependent is by relying on what is called the dana. And the Buddhist monks are supposed to go to the from door to door to beg for their food. And Baba Ambedkar described it very nicely as the bond of alms between the monks and the upasakas. The final verse of this subsection, do not depend on the favor of princes or the kings or any external support, goes like this. Wherefore, brethren, thus must you train yourself. That's how you should train yourself. That's what the Buddha is saying. This is the way you can train yourself. When gains, favors, and flattery befall us, we will reject them. If the political forces, if the kings or princes are trying to support us with gains, favors, and flattery befall us, we will reject them. The Buddha says we should say no to that. We should say no to that support. And when they do befall us, if they are, befalling on the Sangha, if they are not forced on the Sangha, but, now they can be accepted, the Buddha says they shall not hold, they shall not lay hold of and be established in our hearts. In other words, we shouldn't be depend on them even, psychologically. We shouldn't depend on any support and be established in our heart and make slaves of the prince. You see, the last line is very important. Make slaves of the prince. In other words, the Buddha is saying that do not be driven by any external support. Do not be driven by any political force. Do not be driven by any king or prince or any benefactor that might favor and flatter. And I think the purpose of including this kind of teaching here by Baba Ambedkar is to really teach us that it's very important to become self-dependent. It's important to become to rely not on any external agencies, to rely on our own power, to rely on our own strengths. And I think this is teaching for the Buddhists today as to how they can spread the Buddha Dhamma. Not only practice, but even to spread the Buddha Dhamma is very important for not to depend on favor of princes, not to have any external support for that matter. So we look at the subsection 2, which is titled as if the king is righteous, his subjects will be righteous. So here, in other words, the Buddha is emphasizing on the role of leadership, isn't it? It's how important it is for a leader to be righteous. And if the leader is righteous, the followers will be righteous. And the Buddha elsewhere says Raja Bhavatu Dhammiko, means the king should king should be has to have a profound faith in the Dhamma. And this Pali verse captures this very nicely. Raja Bhavatu Dhammiko, the king should be righteous, and if the king is not righteous, his subjects will be righteous. And it sets in motion a kind of a very corrupt system if the leader is not righteous. So the Buddha says that if the king is righteous, his subjects will be righteous. I think this is applicable in any domain where people are organized. If the leadership is righteous, the followers will be righteous, isn't it? So let me read through some of the parts of this subsection 2. Which is titled as if the king is righteous, his subjects will be righteous. Once the Lord addressed the alsmen, the bhikshus said, brethren, during such time as kings are unrighteous, their ministers and officers also become unrighteous. Isn't it? It is having like a cascading effect. If the king is not righteous, then what happens? Their ministers and officers also become unrighteous. The ministers and officers, brethren, being unrighteous, the Brahmins and householders also become unrighteous. And when the Brahmins and householders, brethren, being unrighteous, the town folk and villagers become unrighteous. Isn't it? It's like imitation, the effect of imitation. You know, if people on the so-called positions of power, if they are corrupt, you know, it leads to the corruption all the way down to the masses. So this is what the Buddha is saying, that how important it is for the king or the ruler to be righteous. This is applicable even today, you know, to the political systems, to the political bosses, to those people who are having the political power. If they are corrupt, if they are unethical, you know, it follows all the way down to the masses. The verse number 3 goes like this: but whenever, brethren, kings are righteous, then kings, ministers, officers also become righteous. Whenever kings, ministers, and officers become righteous, the Brahmins and the householders also become righteous. Whenever Brahmins and householders become righteous, the town folk and villagers also become righteous. So this is what the Buddha is talking about, that it's very important for the people in the position of power, for the people who are leaders, who tend to declare themselves or call themselves a leader. For them, it's important to be righteous. And the Buddha goes on explaining this teaching by the way of giving an example. So when kine are crossing, if the old bull soars, they all grow swerving, following his lead. So among men, if he who is reckoned chief walks crookedly, the others crooked go. If the bull is followed by his kin, then what happens? If the bull is swerving, you know, he's moving here and there, not walking on the straight line, the kin will follow his lead. And so among men, if he is who is reckoned chief walks crookedly, the others crooked go. Similarly, whole realm suffers when the king goes wrong. See what the Buddha is trying to say. When the people in the position of power, when they are they are going wrong, if the king is going wrong, if the political system is going wrong, if the political bosses are going wrong, what happens? The whole realm suffers. That's what the Buddha says. Similarly, the whole realm suffers when the king goes wrong. When kine are crossing, if the bull goes straight, they will go straight because his course is straight. So among men, if he who is reckoned chief walks righteously, the others live aright. The whole realm lead happy lives when kings are good, isn't it? So Raja Bhavatu Dhammiko. You see, the Buddha has taught very clearly that, you know, it's very important for the people in the power to be ethical. And we have seen in the Buddhist history as to how the people who are ethical and having the power, how they do good to the masses. You know, in the history of India, in the history of the world, we have the example of Ashoka, we have the example of Kanishka, we have example of in Japan of Prince Sotoko, and you know, in China we can know in a lot of places there have been people who were in power and practiced the Buddha Dhamma, and they have done so much good to the world, have so much done so they have done so much welfare, brought so much happiness to the world. And that's what the Buddha says: if the king is righteous, his subjects will be righteous. So you see, we have seen in the first part as to the Buddha says that, you know, do not rely on the external agency, do not rely on the princes for their support, for their favors, for the gain, and on their flattery. In the second subsection, the Buddha says that it's very important for the ruler to be righteous, for the king to be righteous. And now we are going to turn to the subsection 3, which is titled as "It is the social system on which depends political and military strength." And this is the longest of the subsections in these sermons on the socio-political questions. But it is worth reading throughout and cogitate upon, because this subsection is very important, and it makes all the more sense when we study it in the context of the Buddhist movement in India today, because, you know, it speaks directly to, you know, with the problems facing the communities today. So I think this subsection 3 has to be reread again and again so that we can know the teachings of the Buddha as to how to build the political and military strength. It depends on the social system. If the social system is weak, the political system will be weak. The military system will, there will not be power. And I think that's a very important discussion here, which has taken place in Rajagraha and on Girdhakut, vulture speak. And the occasion was that Ajashatru, the same Ajashatru that we saw in the first section, appears here. Now, at the time, Ajashatru, the son of Queen, consort of Videha origin, the king of Magadha, was desirous of attacking Vajji. Vajji, whose capital was Vaishali. And we have seen that the Buddha was very fond of the city of Vaishali because Vajji was a republican state. We can say some sort of a democratic republic that was, Vajjian kingdom, whose capital whose capital was Vaishali. And we have seen that the Buddha was so much fond of the Vaishali, and Baba Ambedkar says that he was so much, fond of republicanism or democracy that when the Buddha was on his way to parinirvana, he looked thrice back, looking at Vaishali, claiming how beautiful is Vaishali. So he liked Vajjins very much. He liked the kingdom of Vajjins very much. And this is what this section is about. So Ajashatru was thinking of attacking Vajjin. So he said, Ajashatru said that I will root out these Vajjins, mighty and powerful though they may be. I will destroy these Vajjins. I will bring these Vajjins to utter ruin. So this is what Ajashatru, intended to destroy the Vajjins. So he spoke to Brahmin Vassakara, the prime minister of Magadha, and said, come now, O brethren, O Brahmin, do you go to Blessed One and bow down in adoration at his feet on my behalf and inquire on my behalf whether he is free from illness and suffering and in the enjoyment of ease and comfort and vigorous health. That was the way to inquire about somebody. If you are meeting somebody, you will ask them, how are they doing? How is their wealth? So how is their health? Like that. So then tell him that Ajashatru, son of Videhi, the king of Magadha, is eager to attack Vajjins, mighty and powerful though they may be. I will destroy these Vajjins. I will bring these Vajjins to utter ruin. And bear carefully in mind whatever the Blessed One may predict and repeat it to me, for the Buddha speaks nothing untrue. The Buddha speaks nothing untrue. That is what Ajashatru is telling Vassakara, to go to the Buddha and ask him that, he desires to attack and destroy the Vajjins. Then the Brahmin Vassakara hearkened to words of the king, saying, be as you say, and ordering a number of magnificent carriages to be ready, he went to the vulture's peak in Rajagraha. On arriving there, he exchanged with the Blessed One the greetings and compliments, and then delivered to him the message even as the king had commanded. Now at the time, the Venerable Ananda was standing behind the Blessed One, and the Blessed One said to him, have you heard, Ananda, that the Vajjins hold full and frequent public assemblies? Now the Buddha is telling the reason why the Vajjins are politically and militarily strong. He's saying to Ananda, who was standing nearby, that, have you heard, Ananda, that the Vajjins hold full and frequent public assemblies? So note this point, holding full and frequent public assemblies. You see this, there is a very beautiful book on democracy, and it talks about the first democracy as holding the public assemblies, the democracy by discussion. And we have seen that in the ancient India and, even some parts of Greece, this tradition was there, where there were the public assemblies, where the people would come together, assemble together, they will discourse, they will deliberate, and they will decide. And then we have seen the latter forms of democracy. But here, the a form of democracy that is being talked about is the public assemblies, isn't it? Democracy through discussions, democracy through debates, democracy through what we can say by way of exchanging the thoughts and the communication. This is very important heart of the democracy. And here the Buddha says that the Vajjins are holding full and frequent public assemblies. Then the Ananda replies, Lord, so I have heard. So long Ananda rejoined the Blessed One, as the Vajjins hold is full and frequent public assemblies, so long may they be expected not to decline but to prosper. You see, this is the cause of the prosperity. If the people continue to move, meet together, and frequently, just not once or twice, if they keep on meeting frequently and fully with a lot of people joining in, then, they are expected to rise, not to decline. And so long Ananda as the Vajjin meet together in concord. You see, meeting in concord and rise in concord and carry out their undertaking in concord. The harmony is very important. The Buddha says when a group of people, they meet together in concord, in harmony, and rise in concord, when they end their meetings, there is a concord, and carry out their undertaking in concord. Harmony is very important. Without harmony in the society, nothing is possible. No good will come to the society if the society is not harmonious, if it's not in concord. So long as they enact nothing not already established. So, if they want to establish new rules or new law, they have abrogate nothing that has been already enacted and act in accordance with the ancient institutions of the Vajjin as established in the former days. So, for example, the example that we can give here is that of the Constitution. If once it's established, we cannot go against it. We cannot abrogate it because it has been done so meticulously. I'm just giving an example. That's what the Buddha is telling them, that so long as they enact nothing not already established, abrogate nothing that has been already enacted, and act in accordance with the ancient institutions of the Vajjin, which is a democratic Sanghic institution, they will not decline. So long as they honor and esteem and revere and support the Vajjin elders, and make a point of duty to hearken to their words. So the seniors, those who have more experience, if the Vajjins continue to listen to them for their advice, they will continue to prosper, they will not decline. So long as no women or girls belonging to their clan are detained among them by force or abduction. Very important. The women are, and the girls, they are not, detained among them by force or abduction. Very important to have this kind of a gender parity if the society is to prosper. So long as Vajjins respect and follow religion, so long as Ananda, the Vajjins may be expected not to decline but to prosper, and no one can destroy them. You see the strength, how any community can build their strength. Their internal strength can be so strong that they cannot be destroyed. Which is the community that cannot be destroyed? And the Buddha has given the guidelines for the community to become strong. How to make social system, strong. That's what the Buddha has given the pointers to. And I'm going to summarize those points before we move on. The Buddha says that when the people hold full and frequent public assemblies. So, if we are talking about the Buddhist communities today, it's very important. And Baba Ambedkar emphasized that, the Buddhists should go to the Vihar every Sunday. And I think that's very important for the Buddhists to assemble at some place fully and frequently. Because the full and the frequent meetings are very important. The public assemblies are very important. And so long as the Vajjis meet, hold full and frequent public assemblies, they cannot be destroyed because they are strong people. Secondly, what they do when they meet together in concord, harmony is very important, and rise in concord and carry out their undertakings in concord. You see, they meet in concord. When they live in concord. And in between, when they conduct their affairs, when they conduct their meetings, the meetings are conducted in concord, in harmony. So everything is done in a harmonious way. In other words, there is no conflict in between them. So long as Ananda, the Vajjin meet together in concord and rise in concord and carry out their undertakings in concord. So long as they enact nothing not already established, abrogate nothing that has been already enacted, and act in accordance with the ancient institutions of the Vajjin as established in former days. The example that we can look at here in the context today is, the conventions of the Constitution. They are established, nobody has the power to, abrogate them or go against it, because they are the conventions which are established with a meticulous thinking, with a good intention. So long as they honor and esteem, revere, and support the virgin elders. In other words, to listen to those who are more experienced than us, more seniors in the community. And then, so long as no women or girls belonging to their clans are detained among them by force or abduction. Very important, to maintain that kind of a gender respect. So long as the virgin respect and follow religion. So long as Ananda, the virgins may be expected not to decline but to prosper, and no one can destroy them. In short, the blessed Lord declared that so long as virgins believe in democracy and practice democracy, there is no danger to their state. As I told you, the Buddha was very fond of the city of Vaishali, which was the capital of virgins. And and the Buddha has so much love for Vaishali that he looked thrice when he was going to Kushinagar on to attain Parinibbana. He looked thrice back at Vaishali, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar has cited this. And here Baba Sahib Ambedkar makes it very clear his own fondness, his own love for democracy. He says, in short, the blessed Lord declared that so long as the Vajjins believe in democracy and practice democracy, there is no danger to their state. This is the straightforward message to our country today, isn't it? Then the blessed Lord addressed Vassakar and said, when I was staying, O Brahmin, at Vaishali, I taught the Vajjins these conditions of welfare. So this is the Buddhist way of the Buddha's teachings on how to create a strong society, how to create a society which is powerful, which cannot be destroyed, which cannot be challenged. So the first is the community cannot depend on the political bosses or the political forces. The Buddha says that the community has to rely on its own strength. Secondly, what we can derive from here is, if the leader is righteous, ethical, then the followers will be righteous. So the righteous leadership is very important. And thirdly, what the Buddha taught is, if we want to have a strong society, it's very important to practice what the Buddha taught to the Vajjins. In other words, it's very important to believe in democracy and practice democracy. There will be no danger to the state. And we can bring these principles down onto the community level. In every village, in every community, in every town, wherever there are Buddha vihars, and there are thousands of them, we can make use of them to develop democratic communities, to develop democratic public assemblies. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go a little bit fast. I'm going to finish these two remaining subsections, the subsection 4 and the subsection 5. The subsection 4 is about war is wrong. The Buddha says that the war is wrong. And even if the war is conducted, there are duties of the victor who has won peace. And I think this has to be understood very, very clearly. War is wrong. So the same Ajashatru appears and he wants to destroy, this time, King Prasennajit. And in the first war between Ajashatru and Prasennajit, the Prasennajit is destroyed and he is defeated. Okay. And in the second war, the King Prasennajit defeats Ajashatru. Okay, so I'm not going to read through this. I'm going to just read the message of the Buddha. Okay, an horseman returning from the arms tour in Shravasti brought word of this to Exalted One. Okay, thereupon the Exalted One said, a man may spoil another just so far as it may serve his ends, but when he is spoiled by others, he spoils it again. So long as evil's fruit is not matured and the fool does fancy, now is the hour, the chance, but when the deed bears fruit, he fares ill. The slayer gets a slayer in his turn. The conqueror gets one who conquers him. The abuser wins abuse from another. Thus, by the evolution of deed, a man who spoils is spoiled in his turn. What I thought is to elaborate a very important phrase used by Baba Sahib Ambedkar here in this particular subsection, which is called the evolution of the deed. So you see, whenever we talk about the karma, we talk in terms of linearity, that A will lead to B will lead to C, like that. But the Buddhist theory of karma is not like that. And it's very beautifully captured here by the phrase that Baba Ambedkar used, evolution of the deed. So what happens, if we do something to somebody, they do something back to us, and then we do something back to us, then what happens is that thing gets escalated. That's how the violence gets escalated. That's how the conflicts gets bigger and bigger, isn't it? Evolution of the deed. And Buddha was somebody who taught that if you have evil thoughts, if you have violent thoughts, just try to stop them there. If you act on them, then the other person will act on it, and then the cycle of the chain of events will take place. So before the chain of events takes place, the Buddha is saying that we have to guard it and we have to watch it. So the message is very clear that the defeated or the victor is not always a victor. The defeated is not always a defeated. The abuser will meet another abuser. The conqueror will meet another conqueror. The slayer will meet another slayer. It goes on and on. So it has to halt somewhere. It has to stop somewhere. And logically, Baba Ambedkar has connected it with the final section on this topic. So we have to understand that so sometimes we lose, sometimes we win, and this is the law of the world, that the winning and the victory and the defeat will go on. The loss and gain will go on. The praise and blame will go on. These are the ways of the world. But how not to escalate the things? That's what the Buddha says. By not working on when the conflict starts. Because when the conflicts begin, we need to back out. We need to find a ways to make peace with it, not to escalate it further. And the escalation of the deeds leads to the conflict, even to the war. And the Buddha has explained this phenomena very beautifully in other suttas as to how the conflict in the society takes place. So I'm going to read the last section again, the 3 verses. So long as evil's fruit is not matured, the fool does fancy, now it is the hour, the chance. But when the deed bears fruit, he fared ill. The slayer gets a slayer in his return. The conqueror gets one who conquers him. The abuser wins abuse from another. Thus, by the evolution of the deed, a man who spoils is spoiled in his turn. The man who wins will be won by other person. Isn't it? Very beautifully explained by Baba Ambedkar here by putting this subsection 4. And now we advance to the last subsection, which is very small, but it culminates logically into the discussion that has gone beforehand. The duty of the victor who has won peace. So what is the duty of the victor? When the victor in war has won the peace, he claims the right further to degrade the vanquished, if not enslave him. The Buddha had a totally different view on the matter. In his view, if peace had any meaning, it means that the victor has a duty to use his victory for the service of the vanquished. You see, this is what the Buddhism is all about. This is what is the beauty of Buddha. This is what is the beauty of the philosophy of Baba Ambedkar. Even the victorious is not supposed to enslave the person or the people they have defeated. They have a duty to the vanquished. The victor has a duty to the vanquished. What is the duty? Is to service the vanquished. This is the only way by which the peace can be sustained. And I think this is very important for the people who study the conflict and the peace to understand the Buddhist perspective about what is the duty of a victor to the vanquished. His duty is to serve. This is what he said to the bhikshus on this subject. When peace is won and the adept in warfare needs to prove an able, upright man of gracious speech, kind mood, devoid of arrogance, and easy, grateful guest, but no busybody wants but few, sense-disciplined, quick-witted, bluster-free, never importunate, and let him never stoop to conduct mean or low, evoking grave rebuke. May creatures all abound in will and peace. May all be blessed with peace always. All creatures weak and or strong, all creatures great and small, creatures unseen and seen, dwelling afar and near, born or awaiting birth, may all be blessed with peace. Let none cajole or flout his fellow anywhere. Let none wish others harm in dungeon or in hate. Just as with her own life a mother shields from hurt her own, her only child, let all embracing thoughts for all that lives be thine, and all embracing love for all the universe in all its heights and depths and breadths, unstinted love, unmarred by hate within, not rousing enmity, so long as you stand or walk or sit or lie, reflect with all your might on this. It is deemed a state divine. So you see, this section on socio-political question is finished by Baba Ambedkar by talking about the duty of the victor towards the vanquished, and he ends it with what is called the Karniya Metta Sutta. The Metta Sutta is a very famous sutta which talks about how to cultivate the Metta Bhavana, and Baba Ambedkar has given a very beautiful verses here of the Karniya Metta Sutta, culminating into what is the welfare of the society. The welfare of the society lies in metta. And in another discussion, Baba Ambedkar has said that the metta is the foundation of society. Metta is nothing but the social democracy, and without metta the democracy cannot come alive. And what is metta? It's a boundless state of love. It's a divine abode. If there is any divine abode, it's the abode of peace, it's the abode of metta, it's the abode of karuna, it's the abode of mudita, it's the abode of upekha. So you see, this is a very important section that we have studied today, and I'm just going to take a minute to summarize what we have studied today. The Buddha has given the sermons on socio-political questions, and the Buddha says, do not rely on any external agencies, do not rely on any political power for their favors or flattery or gains. In other words, develop your own strengths, develop your own powers within. And the Buddha says that the leader has to be righteous. If the leader is not righteous, if the leader is not ethical, the followers and the society will go to astray. The Buddha says that it's the social system that determines your political and military strength. And the Buddha says that the social system is democratic. And the Buddha gives the teachings on democracy to Vajjins very beautifully, that they meet frequently. And I think these pointers has to be written in all vihars, everywhere we go. They are like the good conditions to make a strong society. So Buddha says that the social system has to become strong, and the way to make a social system strong is by making, promoting democracy within. And the Buddha says that the war is wrong, any sort of conflict is wrong, because the conflict escalates into violence, and the violence is bad for the community. And the Buddha says that it's a duty of the victor to look after the welfare of the vanquished. And the Buddha, and finally Baba Ambedkar cites here the most chanted sutta, the Metta Sutta here, and I will end by looking at it, chanting it, and I will stop. May creatures all abound in will and peace. May all be blessed with peace always. All creatures, weak or strong, all creatures, great and small, creatures unseen or seen, dwelling afar or near, born or awaiting to be born, may all be blessed with peace. Let none cajole or flout his fellow anywhere. Let none wish others harm in dungeon or in hate. Just as with her own life a mother shields from hurt her only child, let all embracing thoughts for all that lives be thine, and all embracing love for all the universe in all its heights and depths and breadths, unstinted love, unmarred by hate within, not rousing enmity. So as you stand or walk or sit or lie, reflect with all your might on this. It is deemed a state divine. So with this, we will finish our discussion today, and I will open up the class for any discussion, any comments. So anything? Anybody would like to say anything or offer comments?
So first section says that we should be master of ourselves. We should guide ourselves, and we should not depend on others. So one should take care of his thoughts, his action, body, mind, and speech, so that he doesn't harm anyone, and he for the welfare of society.
Right. That's true. Welcome, madam. So I think if there are no further comments, we can see that we have finished now the book number 4, and from the next class onwards, we will be beginning to study the book number 5. And before we do that, let's see if there is anything on the class today or anything on that we have been studying so far. If not, then should we end the class here today?
Just one comment, Rahul here.
Yes, Rahul.
Yeah. So I just like that phrase, evolution of deed. So in the context of Jatak tales, when we were reading those Jatak tales, we were saying that it is said like that in the previous life, Buddha was like this. So we were a little confused about this. So why the things are mentioned like that? Is there any previous birth and someone can remember that one? But if we see those tales in the context of evolution of deeds and what message is there, so then that is very clear. So I just realized that one again when reading that phase. The evolution of deed was the main concept there. How the evolution of deed happens, that was mentioned in this Jatak tales. Because there are several Jatak tales.
Yes.
That's it.
That's a good point. That's what I thought, because this phrase also help us to understand the law of karma, isn't it? And we can see it in the context of the conflicts in the society, interpersonal conflict. We say something, then other person says something, then we go on escalating it, and the deeds gets evolved into a stage where it leads to violence, it leads to conflict, and so on and so forth, isn't it? So
correct.
Buddha would say that nip the deed in the bud. Don't escalate it. Don't let it proliferate. Don't let it expand. Don't let it swell to
correct
to a limit where you cannot handle it.
And eye for eye can make the word blind. Yes, correct.
It suggests Paticca Samutpada.
Yes. Yeah.
Arising again and again, evolution of things.
Yes. But it's a more complex and complementary, in a very complicated and very how to say it, in a very complex form. So the things are very easy in the beginning, which we can manage, but when the things escalate to a level where it becomes very difficult for us to manage.
Yeah, if they are not controlled, then they proliferate.
Yes. So the Buddha says, keep everything simple. Isn't it? Don't complicate it. Okay, then thank you so much for all of you joining in today, and see you in the next class.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jevin.
Thank you, Jevin.